Hello everyone, Amer back with another Mission Impossible episode review. This time I'm doing Season 4, Episode 18, which is called Gitano. Gitano is apparently the Spanish word for gypsy, according to what I read. So we start with Jim taking the big white convertible this time, and he finds instructions in a luggage storage facility. The mission: General Aragas of Sardia plans to murder young King Victor and frame Victor's uncle Duke Clement of Montego for the deed, seizing power and destabilizing the area, and the IMF must stop it. So we get the usual team, plus a dancer named Zorka Banat. She's played by Margarita Cordova, but not credited with her picture, as is usual, for whatever reason. And we also get a glimpse of a guy who will be identified as Captain Sarah of Montego. In the apartment scene, Jim tells us that the frame is being pushed forward by Clement's trusted official, Colonel Moya, who is secretly working for Aragas. And Aragas has cleverly turned Victor against his uncle, so no one is buying the idea that Clement's custody of Victor is for his own protection. Everyone believes that Victor is being held against his will. Off the IMF goes to Montego, where Jim drives a truck of fuel into a fuel facility containing a hidden Barney, who makes his way into an official car and plants some equipment, including a bug, anesthetic gas, and whatnot, and when he's done, the two head out. Clement once again asks Victor to reconsider returning to Sardia. Colonel Moya slyly urges the king to listen to his uncle, to no avail. He lays out the return path as per Aragas' plan, and after Aragas and Victor have a conversation, the young king and Moya head back towards Sardia. The IMF are waiting on their path, and so are Moya's men in ambush. During the ride, Moya gets annoyed at Victor's blathering and hints that he won't make it back home alive. The gas is activated, knocking all the passengers out as the car crashes into an IMF-placed obstacle. Captain Sarah joins the IMF, who take Victor away in their truck, and Jim goes ahead with the others as Barney removes the evidence. So Moya wakes up in Dr. Jim's office with Captain Sarah and is told that he's in the town of Tortino near the border. He's shown that the other two passengers are quote-unquote dead. He asks about the boy, but is shocked to be told that no one else was found at the scene, and certainly not a boy. He immediately contacts his officials to close the border and find Victor no matter what. Promises Clement to not let him down, but of course they don't find Victor for the moment. Once Moya leaves, Jim revives the other two soldiers and lets Captain Sarah deal with them. Victor wakes up with gypsies Paris and Zorka in their truck, who go through the motions of administering home remedies for his own minor injuries and eventually believe that he is actually King Victor. Victor says he needs help to be kept safe from Moya. So the gypsies say they'll hide him by dressing him up as a girl for now, and Paris will go and approach Aragas for help. Zorka, Willie, and Victor go to a town to perform, and with Jim nearby as a tourist. They haggle with a guy who I guess is a tavern owner or something, who offers to employ them at a reduced rate and tells Zorka to make the girl look prettier. So more makeup and whatnot is applied to Victor's dismay. Paris meets with Aragas, who offers to take the general to Victor, but of course it's not really possible for Aragas to go to Montego without arousing suspicion, and threatens to rough Paris up. But Paris warns him to tread lightly. If he doesn't return safely, his friends can just go to Clement. Aragas calls Moya and tells him what he's learned. Moya and his men arrive at the town as Jim watches and Zorka dances while Willie and Victor play instruments. Moya questions the tavern owner about the new people, tells him there's a reward for Victor. Moya talks to the distracted Victor, who says her name is Petra and gets a bit insolent with him, forcing Willie and Zorka to make him apologize and distract Moya away. Moya's men continue to search the area, including the building the IMF planned to use, and once they head away, Barney signals Jim to head in, and they start getting things set up. Paris tells Aragas' men nothing, so he decides to risk going to Montego himself, and Captain Sarah gets a confession from Moya's men, shocking Clement, who had full faith in Colonel Moya. As Zorka combs Victor as Petra's hair, the tavern owner notices Victor's wig shift a little bit, alerting Moya and letting him know that they went to the IMF warehouse. Moya's men surround it. At the warehouse, Victor is very glad to get back into his regular clothes. Aragas arrives with Paris and meets with Moya, who pretends to be surprised that they are working together. Moya says he knows where Victor is, so Aragas tells him to dispose of Paris. Paris says that there's a secret way out of the warehouse. They still need him to get into it so that they can find it. Off they head, Aragus calls out to Victor, sending the elevator down. Paris warns him to run, so Willie grabs Victor and heads back into the twists and turns of the warehouse. The soldiers knock Paris out. They head down, with Victor still calling out to Aragus, but he can't find him. They head towards an exit, and at the right time, Willie lets Victor go, who dashes off towards the general. To Victor's shock, as he approaches, the general fires at him, but fortunately the IMF has strategically put bulletproof glass in the way. Barney turns on the lights as Jim arrives with Clement and Captain Sarah, putting Aragus under arrest. Barney removes the glass, and Aragus tries to make excuses to Victor for shooting at him, but Victor finally believes his own eyes and looks apologetically at his Uncle Clement as the IMF head away. Mission accomplished. I'm going to give this episode a grade of a B-. I'll start with the good, and then I'm going to do a little bit of counterpoint. Because there's some things that I kind of discovered, and a lot of it has to do in retrospect with some other things that have happened in season 4. What's good about this episode? There's a lot of uniqueness in this episode, I would say. The characters are very, very unique in terms of having a very, very young king to protect, which kind of makes it separates it from a lot of the kind of usual plots that we have, which are just, separate and mislead, or two guys working together that you have to pit against each other. It's unlike a lot of the plots that we have seen this season. Also, we have a very unique female agent in Margarita Cordova as Zorka Banat. She's okay. She doesn't get to do a whole lot. She's another very kind of one-dimensional character who fits this plot, but really wouldn't, fit anywhere else. So she's okay. I wouldn't say she's great. Not her fault. It's just the character, really. Also, things that I found that were good. The guest stars otherwise are really, really good. Peter Mark Richmond as Aragus. This is the sort of role that he's born to play. This is the only thing he can do. That's a little unfair, but I think you know what I mean. He's always playing this character, self-assured, cocky, arrogant. It's all over his face, right? That's the kind of character that he was just born to play. More than him, though, Barry Williams as young King Victor I think he does a pretty good job here. This is a pre-Brady bunch, Greg Brady, if you haven't figured that out already. If you didn't know, you probably realize it now and say, hey, yeah, it's familiar. Seeing him, dressed up as a girl is kind of funny. You get a few laughs out of it. It's okay. More than either of those two, though, I was really, really impressed with what Rudy Solari, who plays Colonel Moya here, is able to do. He's been in several episodes, and unfortunately for him, he's a little bit typecast. He's always kind of a henchman. You will remember him from season 3 in The Heir Apparent. He was the henchman for Charles Aidman's character, General Cassette, and he's gonna reappear as that, for the next few seasons. He's always, that guy, the heavy, the henchman, that sort of thing. But here, I think he's got a much more. He's got a much bigger role, and I really, really like what he does with it. He maximizes his minutes, and I think he really is the MVP of this episode. So that's really the good. Now I'm going to move on to kind of the counterpoint part of this. One thing that is good is that it is an end in mind plot, which I like. The team is able to complete this mission by working backwards. The only way it's going to be successful is to engineer a situation where Victor sees with his own eyes that Aragus is going to kill him, and always intended to do that. So the only way to make that happen is to create that situation where Aragus gets a chance to do it, but in a controlled environment, so that Victor is not at risk. So the IMF says, well, we'll have to put them kind of in a warehouse or, spirit him away, and Arrakis is going to have to chase him. And now he says, oh, the two of us are all alone. Now I've got my chance. And then they just have to kind of work backwards and say, okay, how are we going to get to that point? And I do really like those kind of end-in-mind plots. That's exactly what the IMF is supposed to be doing. That's why Jim Phelps is as good as he is, especially when he comes up with those kinds of things. Now, that said, the counterpoint to that is, I couldn't really put my finger on why the episode as a whole seems a little bit unsatisfying. I don't think I'm going to get any disagreement that this episode, while it's good, doesn't really belong among the elite episodes like we saw back in season 3, or even one like Submarine from earlier this season, right? It's not up there. If you feel that it is, I'd love to hear why you think so. But I don't think I'm going to find too many people who are going to think that. And I thought about it, and I said, what is it? Why can't I put my finger on why? And then I did kind of come up with it. And the problem here is that while the villains are, they're not dumb, they're not lame, they're not schmucks. They're menacing enough, and they come off as formidable enough. But the IMF just seems so much better prepared. They really do. And that kind of dovetails into my second point, counterpoint. It was good to see that, when, there was a bit of a problem with the mission where, the bad guys learned where Victor was being held without Paris having to take them there. They had already figured that out. The improv that's done by Paris to warn Willie to, hide away or hide Victor away is good. That they worked around, that problematic piece, despite the fact that Paris got knocked out and roughed up a little bit. That was pretty good. But the counterpoint to that is that nothing really seems to go wrong with the mission except for that one little thing where, the tavern owner in the town, is watching Victor, and he's watching Zorka comb his hair, and then suddenly the wig shifts, right? And that it just seems so deliberate. Obviously, every plot is going to have some contrivances, and things are going to have to go the IMF's way, obviously, or else there really isn't much of a show. But in this case, it's that one deliberate plot device, and it just does seem so deliberately placed there, just to make it so that we don't have just a rat-a-tat-tat, boom, 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 here we go, mission accomplished. And I'm beginning to realize that that's actually something that has been a problem in other episodes where, I usually will put an episode and say, it's not bad, but, it doesn't really deserve more than a B- or a C or C+ or whatever. And I think, and I'm going to start calling this the perfect knowledge flaw. The IMF, as I mentioned in the previous counterpoint, is just so much better prepared than the villains. And again, in many cases, and I've pointed those out, it's because of lameness or schmuckery, and there's also problems when the villains are unengaging. But even in situations where we don't have that, like this episode, the IMF it just seems to be able to steamroll over these villains. And again, it's because they're just so much better prepared, and it's because they seem to have this perfect knowledge. And that really is a flaw in this episode and in others. And I'm going to continue to point that out now that I've kind of got the verbiage for it. The IMF knows, the route that, Victor's car is going to take. They know which car to use. As I mentioned, some of this is necessary. Otherwise, you don't really have a show, right? And, for the IMF to have to figure out each piece of the puzzle as it would go along, well, that's probably not the kind of thing that you could fit in an hour, although you could try. And sometimes the IMF has tried, and I appreciate it when they do. I think it is doable most times. But in this case, it just really, really is. There's certain things that the IMF should not be able to have perfect knowledge of, but in this case, they absolutely do. And that's why this episode, like many others, does not belong with the elite. Anyway, I'm comfortable with my grade of B- for this. As I mentioned, it's a unique episode. It's not a cookie cutter episode. It is definitely, I would say, an above average episode. I missed one good, I'm sorry, that I should have mentioned. Also really, really good. Paris, Leonard Nimoy again gets to be a giggling slimeball. Not in the usual way that we've seen before, but again, he plays, this lively gypsy, and gives off that vibe as we have seen before. And I always do like that, so I wanted to get that in there as well. And I think that's what I have to say about this one. Thank you as always for watching. Please like this video. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And please leave your comments. Always love to hear what you have to say as always. Thank you again, and I will see you next time.